I'm going to talk a little bit about some resources you can use to help hone your bird identification skills, whether that be identifying birds by sight or identifying birds by sound. Both are really important for improving your birding skills. Here are some really useful online resources that you can refer to when you're birding. So this one is called birdweb.org, and it's a website by the Seattle Audubon Society, and it is a great synthesis of birds that can be observed in Washington in different locations year-round. And I usually recommend people who are newer to bird look at the section on birding sites in ecoregions. And we are in the Puget Trough, number 2. And it actually gives a really nice view of the habitats in the Puget Trough, some great birding sites, and climate, human impact. And then the key is this great bird checklist that you can find down here. This checklist can be copied and pasted into Excel, and you could filter it, okay, by say month and how common the birds are. If you're new to birding, I would recommend that you just focus on the common species and then work from there. And I'm going to paste this information into Excel and show it to you here in just a minute. So that's BirdWeb. Another great site is eBird. And eBird can be used to explore all sorts of information, from birding hotspots to range maps for species. And eBird you can sign up for an account with eBird and keep track of the species you observe, or you can just use its tools. The most popular tool to use for our kinds of projects would be the Explore tool, and either going to explore hotspots. You can also explore bird charts that can be useful, and species maps. So I'm going to take us to species maps just very quickly and type in Anna's hummingbird. That's a species of bird that we can see here in the winter and in the breeding season. It's a year-round resident now in Western Washington. Okay, zooming into this until we get a finer grain of resolution. And you can see in these finer grains, I'm just going to zoom in around Olympia, that this bird can be found pretty widespread. If I take a filter and filter to a specific date range, say I want to look and see what its range used to be, I'm going to go back to say 1900 to, let's go way back in time to say 1980. And we set that as our date range. You can see that there are almost no Anna's hummingbirds. And if you filter that, probably these were birds that were showing up in the winter. If you filter that to be, say, breeding season, let's just say with the same date range, we still have a few. So back in 1980, a few Anna's hummingbirds were showing up. They were really resident birds in California, and they started to make their way up over time. People had lots of ideas as to why that's the case. Perhaps it's more bird feeding, more hummingbird feeders being put up. Perhaps it's something to do with climate or habitat change, but it's an interesting trend that you could use as a layer on top of a project. And we can do this with all North American bird species on eBird. Another useful resource is the North American Breeding Bird Survey. And it's run by the USGS, and it's a slightly less user-friendly site, but it has standardized breeding bird data from specific survey routes for all North American birds. So we have people with really good birding skills go out and they repeat these routes every single year in a standardized way during the first week of June. And so you can track breeding bird distributions and ranges and population changes over time. And there's a lot of options in here. One is you can use the educational tools to look at a species of interest. Okay, and here I've selected Anna's hummingbird, and you can actually see here they're showing the traditional range of that bird on this map, and you can learn about its life history and all sorts of other information. You can also track species trends. This is, again, I did a trend analysis that the USGS had already done of Anna's hummingbird across the United States, and you can track it from 1968. And it has this abundance index all the way up to 2015. And you can see that's a change by about a tripling of how common they are in all surveys. So they actually have a population that's expanding and growing. You can also get the raw data from the breeding bird survey, and you can query the data and filter it by certain aspects. And it sometimes is a little bit tricky to get exactly what you want, but you can do that through these various tools in the breeding bird survey. Now, okay, I have my list from BirdWeb. Let me see. I'm going to stop sharing there, and I'm going to share this screen and just show you quickly how you might filter your results. You can actually set filters on these data by clicking filter. And let's go by selecting only birds that are common in April. And if you filter by that, you get a much shorter list than the original list that we had. And I'm actually going to get rid of these columns because it makes things trickier to see. But if you start with that, you get a shorter checklist. And then you can read about these species, a bunch of ducks at the beginning. And we have a list of still about 200 species. But these are all common species that you could find in the region. And then finally, probably your most important resource is going to be your field guide for birds. And I will talk about using your field guide in another video.